Smartphone Addiction National Survey webinar, we'll be presenting the findings of our recently completed national survey. And joining me in the presentation will be Brian Peterson with EMI. He's the Digital Marketing Director at EMI. And Glenn Stark, who's the President of Stark Statistical Consulting, which is based in Albuquerque. I wanted to thank the Detroit American Marketing Association for agreeing to host the webinar, and especially Holly Shire. Holly is actually on the line, and she had some instructions for the participants. Holly?
Absolutely, thank you. We are so happy to host this. I'm really excited to hear the results, and we're going to be recording this session, so it's certainly something that we can send to all the attendees, and as well as allow you to continue to promote it in a variety of different ways. So just a few things to remember today. If you have questions, please use the chat box on the right. If you do not see the window, there should be a little icon at the upper right that says chat. Please click that, and it will allow you to see your chat box. So if you have questions throughout today's webinar, please choose host and panelists for who you would like to send your chat to, and then ask your question in the box in the window provided. And then we have Brian, who will be monitoring all the questions that are coming in today and asking them as we go along, or saving them until the end depending on the question. So if you have any questions throughout, please use that chat box. And if you have any problems with today's webinar or anything, please use that chat box as well. And myself and Sam, who are moderating it here, will be sure to get back with you. So again, this webinar is going to be recorded. So thanks very much, Michael. We're looking forward to it.
All right, thank you. So we have a simple agenda here. We'll first just provide a little bit of background on the survey, just to give you some context, and then the bulk of the presentation obviously is the findings. So we'll go through the findings, and then we can field any questions you might have. And it's possible if we see a question while we're doing this and we can get to it, we will during the presentation. First, I just wanted to explain that this we received no outside funding for this survey. It was a pretty large endeavor. So it's really the result of these 6 organizations donating their resources, people, time, and services to get this done. And they all agreed to do this because they feel that it's a critical issue, and they felt that we could contribute some original insights. We had some original insights we wanted to validate on the survey, and they felt that it could be a valuable contribution to the national conversation about smartphone addiction and how to address it. So just very briefly, EMI is a survey research sample provider in Cincinnati, and Mike Holmes is the president of EMI, and he agreed to provide the sample and to host the survey. So we're extremely appreciative. They actually, EMI had 3 people involved in doing this. Brian, who's helping to present today, and then Brian Lamar, who's the VP of Insights at EMI, and then Amy Carley, who's the VP of Operations. So very, very thankful to EMI. Glenn Stark at Stark Statistical Consulting. Glenn is a stats expert. He has a master's in statistics. He did postgraduate work, and he's been in research for 20 years. He actually has a master's in East Asian Studies from Stanford, and he worked in China for about 11 years doing research. The Detroit AMA, again, has provided the hosting, and Anxious Creations is a graphic design firm in Cincinnati. They designed the report, and then Signoi provided text analytics on the open-ended questions, so thank you to them. Now, Brian is going to just explain briefly how we came up with the sample.
Thanks, Mike. Before I get into the sample method we used for this project, I just want to give a quick kind of background for those of you not familiar with market research, what research panels are. Panels are groups of people who are recruited to take part in market research. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of these scattered across the world and they are made up of all different people, opinions, behaviors, and they all have a different focus. So some focus on consumers, they could be different focuses in business as well as healthcare. What EMI specializes in is that we blend sample from these different research panels to create customized, high-quality sample plans that fit our clients and their projects. And we do this from our network of 150 partners across 95 countries. For this project, we utilized several different partners that we know focus on this particular age group within the U.S. We then managed the project using our proprietary sample management system called SWIFT. Not only did it consolidate all the different partners and their results, but we also use the technology in it to identify any duplicate respondents, bots, or any fraudulent responses to ensure that we provide the high quality data. In this case, we ensured that we had just over 1,100 responses that were unique and human. The survey was fielded in late April. And as part of our overall plan, we did establish some quotas going in around grade level and gender, as well as balancing it to the U.S. population. That way, we removed any bias for oversampling any single group or geographic region. With that being said, I'm actually going to turn it over to Glenn Stark now to give you a little more detail around the breakdown of some of those respondents.
Thank you, Brian. There are two aspects of this survey that are very notable. The first is that it's a large survey, and the second is that it's a survey that's representative of teenagers throughout the United States, because the participants of this survey reflect the diversity of the United States population without much bias. There were over 1,000 respondents aged 13 to 18 who completed the entire survey. They were in grades 7 through 12. This is a sufficiently large survey for margins of error of 3% or less in all of the statistics that we're reporting here today. About a third of the respondents are middle school students, which is grades 7 and 8, and about 2/3 of the respondents are high school students, which are grades 9, 10, 11, and 12. As you mentioned, we used quotas to ensure an equal number of male and female respondents at each grade level, which you can see in the two green columns down the center of this table, which enumerates the total number of respondents that we had. The respondents in this survey represent all 50 states, but they come from 961 different zip codes throughout the United States, as I've shown in this map. There is no bias on a regional level. 88% of the respondents in this survey live in urban zip codes and 12% live in rural zip codes, which is very similar to that division in the United States population. And the ethnic breakdown of the respondents of the survey is shown in the table at the bottom of this slide, and it also reflects the diversity of the population of the United States. So this indicates that not only have we interviewed enough people that we're getting small margins of errors on the statistics that we're reporting, but we're fairly confident that we are talking about the wide range of teenagers across the country. And I'll turn this over to Mike, who will talk about the specific findings of this study.
Great, thanks a lot, Glenn. And very briefly, I just want to explain that we developed this questionnaire. It's based upon exploratory research that Screen Education has done over the last 2.5 years. So we basically did a lot of small-scale studies over 2.5 years with kids at summer camps, with schools, and then some college students. And this is a combination of both formal research studies and informal exploratory research. So we use the insights gained from this exploratory research to develop the questionnaire. So the whole idea with the national survey is we wanted to take some of what we feel are really original insights that we generated in that exploratory research and measure them and validate them with the survey. So on to the findings. The first issue we looked at was addiction, and we wanted to get some measure of how widespread smartphone addiction is among teens. And you might know that there's this big debate about whether to use the label addiction, and you might have heard that the World Health Organization just decided to add a code for video gaming addiction to their ICD manual. But there's no objective measure right now. So the Common Sense Media did a survey 2 years ago, and they had a great solution. They basically asked teens on the survey, do you feel like you're addicted to your phone? And at that time, 50% of the teens that responded said, I feel addicted to my phone. And that mirrored what I was seeing 2 years ago. But I had noticed in the last 2 years that kids started to underreport their own addiction. So they would not label themselves addicted. But if you ask them about their friends, they'd say, oh, 75% of my friends are addicted to their phones. So it gave me the sense that they're underreporting their own addiction and probably being more objective in judging their friends' level of addiction. So the bottom line is we decided to, in our survey, instead of asking them to report on themselves, we figured they'd underreport. We asked them to tell us what percent of your friends do you feel are addicted to their phones. And it came out to 60%. So on average, the teens feel like 60% of their friends are addicted to their phones. So I feel that you could probably use Common Sense Media's 50% as a low-end range and ours as a high-end range, possibly even higher based on some of the other questions we have here. So I think a reasonable estimate would be anywhere from 50 to 70% of kids have a problem putting their phones down. You might have heard there was big news last year. It was all over the media, and it still is, that Silicon Valley is intentionally designing apps to be addictive. And we know that this is causing a lot of problems for kids, so we feel that it's critical that kids know this dynamic, that they know that this is going on, that they're being targeted, and that they have an awareness of this, you know? So we wanted to ask, you know, are you aware that Silicon Valley is doing this? And we found that 71% said, yes, I knew or I learned that Silicon Valley is intentionally designing apps to be addictive. And this number, just for me personally, I thought it would actually be lower. So I was actually surprised, pleasantly surprised that it was this high. But I have to say, I feel like the goal has to be 100%. This shows you there was a slight difference between middle school and high school students. So there was about a 10% spread. So there were more high school kids that had heard this than junior high kids. Related to, addiction obviously is compulsive smartphone use. So that's the whole idea behind smartphone addiction, is that kids are behaving compulsively with their phones. They can't stop using their phones even if they want to, or even if they feel it's causing them problems. So we had a couple of questions to try to get at compulsive phone use. So we asked at the top bullet point here, how often do you find that you want to stop using your phone, but you're unable to do so? And there were different frequencies that they could select. So basically 32% said that they find themselves every single day wanting to stop using their phone, but being unable to do that. And then there was, an additional group that said every, several times a week or once a week. But if you think about this, basically a third of all teens every single day have the experience at least once of wanting to put their phone down and not being able to. And then the second bullet point below here, I developed a concept of compulsive phone use that I call cycling, and that's the idea that you have a list of 3 to 5 apps, small number of apps that are your favorites, that you cycle through continuously over and over again to check for notifications, right, or to make posts. And so we asked them, do you have a list of 3 to 5 apps or sites that you continuously cycle through at any opportunity? And 70% said yes. So more than 2/3 are just continuously going to their phone to cycle through their apps, which is a compulsive behavior. And you can see here, there was a split between female and male, so there were 10% more females doing this than males. We also found in our exploratory research that the phones are posing an emotional burden to kids. So when we did research with summer camps that don't allow kids to bring phones, so these are kids attending a camp, they're not allowed to bring their phone, and they're there for 2 to 4 weeks. And when we would ask them things like, well, what's been the best thing about not having your phone? We would hear like, oh, I get to escape all my notifications, or I get to escape drama or bullying or gossip. So we wanted to use the survey to measure this. How often are they experiencing these things online? and how bad does it make them feel? Obviously, they're saying they're glad to escape because it's an emotional burden. So if you look at the notifications, 41% said that they feel actually overwhelmed by their notifications every single day. So that's every single day. That's a strong word, I think, overwhelmed. But if you imagine these kids have 2 to 3 social media sites they belong to, and probably hundreds, if not a couple of thousand, up to a couple thousand of people following them, they probably get a lot of notifications. And the second bullet point is one of the reasons it's overwhelming. It's not just the volume of notifications, it's the fact that they feel obligated to respond. So we wanted to ask about that. And we found that 58% said that they generally feel that people expect them to respond immediately to their notifications. So that's another reason it's a burden. It's not just the number of notifications. It's that they feel pressure to laboriously go through their notifications and sift through them and respond to each person individually. And I've heard stories from kids in our research that friends get mad if you don't respond to even their liking a photo. So that's one way that these phones are burdening the kids. Another one that everyone knows about is bullying. So we asked about bullying, and 36% said that they witness someone being bullied online every week. So basically a third of kids are witnessing bullying at least once a week. And we asked if they find it upsetting, and almost all of them basically said when they witness someone being bullied, it's upsetting to them. So 89%. And you can see here, we're trying to highlight some of the splits between male and female when there was a significant difference. So again, there were more females who said that they felt upset than males. Another sort of measure we wanted to take of how toxic the online environment can be for them is whether they've seen bullying result in physical violence. And we had no preconceptions about this. We hadn't heard this before, but we asked it. And sure enough, 31% said that they've seen online bullying end up resulting in physical violence. And you can see there were more girls than boys that have seen that. Drama was another thing that we looked at. A lot of kids talked about escaping drama. They were glad to get away from drama. And 45% said they witnessed what they call drama every week. Every day, and then another 29% witness it every week. So you can see what we're building here is a picture of all of these burdensome experiences. They're experiencing, a good number of them, 30, 40% are experiencing them daily. And in combination, it can pose a real, burden to the kids. These are some of the quotes. Since we don't really know what drama is, we wanted to get a definition of it. So we asked, can you give us, if they said, yes, I experienced drama, can you give us an example? So these are some quotes that I pulled. It's basically, if you want to read through these, it's basically all about people having public arguments, caustic arguments, toxic arguments online, disagreeing, breaking up with each other, fighting each other, that sort of thing. Gossip was another one, and 38% said they witness gossip every single day. 24% said they witness it at least once a week. Excuse me, and this is a frequency just to show, we wanted to illustrate here that the girls, for a lot of these things, the girls seem to be more impacted by a lot of these online experiences. We're seeing a big difference between girls and boys. So you can see 44% of the girls witness gossip daily, 33% of the boys. 57%, it's a burden to them. So 57% said that they're disturbed when they see someone being gossiped about. And the second point here, 42% are fearful of being gossiped about online. That's something we heard from kids at summer camp. So we talked to kids at summer camp, and they're away from their phones for a month. And I remember there were 2 girls that said, well, I don't have my phone, and all my friends back home have my phone, so I'm just wondering if they're talking about me and if they're starting rumors that I'm not there to dispel. So, even being away from the phone, it was a burden to them. And then if you look at, this was a significant gap between male and female we wanted to highlight here. So there's a 20-point gap between boys and girls in terms of their fear of being gossiped about online. 52% of the girls and only 32% of the boys. We developed the questionnaire. It was right after that Florida shooting, and I think there was another shooting around that time. So we thought, here's another measure. We had heard that with some of the recent shootings, the perpetrator had actually been bullied online. So we thought this would be an interesting way to measure how toxic the environment is. Do kids feel that the social media environment is so toxic that it's actually contributing to this, that it could be a potential cause, you know? And 73% said yes, we feel that social media use contributes to conditions. So the idea is, does it create conditions that you think could result in a school shooting? So 73% said yes. So as we all know, if you're addicted to your phone, you're compulsively using it, you can't stop. It's obviously going to, you know, what you're basically doing is multitasking throughout the day. Everything you do, from, you know, eating breakfast, being at school, being with friends, doing your homework, you are multitasking. You're doing that activity, and you're also checking your phone all the time. So we reasoned that this clearly is cutting into productivity, so we want to get a measure of that. So we felt like this was a good way to ask it. We asked, how often do you end up not doing something you should do? So fulfilling a responsibility, in other words, right? How often do you shirk a responsibility simply because you spend time on your phone instead? And 35%, so a third of teens said that they do this every single day. So a third of kids every single day are not fulfilling a responsibility they have. And most of the examples were school work, you know, homework, or chores around the house. And these are some examples. So I was on Instagram instead of doing my chores. I sometimes forget to clean the house because I'm on my phone. I was on my phone and I didn't do my homework. I didn't do chores and I played games on my phone. I didn't study for school. He talks about chores again. So clearly they know it's cutting into their productivity. They're basically admitting that here. We thought an even more interesting measure would be, okay, it's understandable that a kid would put off a responsibility, right? Something they probably don't want to do. But what about something that they actually enjoy doing or they'd like to do? Are these kids so tied or tethered to their phones that they can't put them down to do something they actually want to do? And I was really shocked at this, but 30% said they end up not doing something they would actually like to do every single day simply because they spent time on their phone. And when you look at these examples, you'll see, you know, these are things that they would really enjoy, that would be rich for them, right, that they're missing out on. So they stayed on their phone instead of going out to eat with their family. They didn't play basketball. They ended up not going jogging because they stayed on their phone. They didn't go out with friends. Didn't go shopping with my dad because I wanted to be on my phone and my computer. I didn't take a bath because I wanted to be on my phone. Didn't go hiking, and I didn't get time to draw or paint because I was on my phone. So you can see, if you view this as an aspect of productivity, like doing things you enjoy doing or hobbies, then clearly it's cutting into productivity. And then another related question was, we obviously, you know, assume that it's cutting into their studying, their academic achievement. So we asked, do you feel that your phone is an obstacle to getting the best grade you can in school? And 41% said yes. So that's the impact on productivity and achievement. Another issue that's been talked about a lot, and Jean Twenge's book got into this, iGen, last year, excuse me, is the impact on socializing. So we encountered this in our exploratory research at camps. It was stunning to talk to kids who had been at camp for 2 to 4 weeks and have them say, I just can't believe how well I get to know people when I'm with them face to face versus on a screen. And I actually had 2 kids. One was last week. I did focus group last week. And then one I remember from last year said, I actually feel, you know, I've been at camp for 3 weeks. I feel like I've gotten to know these new friends that I had never met before better than I know my best friends back home because we're talking face to face. So we wanted to explore this. And the top point here is we asked, so we just want to get a measure. Do you spend more time socializing with close friends online or face-to-face? And so clearly 2/3 said we spend more time face-to-face, but what I'm showing here is that 1/3 obviously said no, I spend more time socializing online with my close friends. Then we wanted to get at their desire, so we wanted to see is this a frustration to them, right? Do they have a hunger to have more face-to-face time that they just can't achieve because this phone is an obstacle. And sure enough, 69% said they wish they could spend more time socializing with close friends face-to-face and less time socializing online. And the bottom point here, this is something that emerged in our focus groups last year. I'm sorry, the year before, the first year we did research on this. And this was, we had a couple of kids in a session. These were 15-year-olds. And we were talking about this issue, and someone said, well, come on, even when we do get together face-to-face, the phone is an obstacle to socializing. You know, so he talked about how when they have the sleepovers with their buddies, there'll be 6 kids in a room together, sitting silently for 2 hours while they're just staring at their phones. So we asked about that, and sure enough, this is a common experience. 52% said that when they spend times with their friends on the weekend, so this is clearly social time, they have extended stretches of time where they're just sitting silently together, not talking, looking at their phones. So again, you can see in some here there's a major impact on the social life of kids, and that impact is mostly that the phone is an obstruction to face-to-face communication, which they're clearly saying with this second point here is more gratifying for them. We looked at the learning environment. So getting back to this idea of, which I just mentioned, is that, you know, that the phones are an obstacle to academic achievement and learning. And I want to repeat that statistic. So 41% said that their phone's an obstacle to getting the best grades they can. If you accept that, then the question is, how is it hurting your ability to get grades? It obviously must be impacting homework. So we asked, how often while you're doing homework, how many times per hour do you check your phone while doing homework? And the average number was 9 times per hour. So that's every 6.5 minutes. And you can imagine if these kids are, you know, they're getting an alert and it's a text message or a post of a continuous discussion all their friends are having on social media, it's easy to imagine that they're spending 2-3 minutes responding to the notification before they go back to their work. And if this is happening 6 times an hour, I'm sorry, 9 times an hour, it's clearly eating into homework time, and it's fragmenting their attention, right? Which is going to eat into their ability to learn. The bottom one here, we had some of the research we did with schools, talking to teachers, we just heard that the environment in the classroom for some of these teachers is just horrible. They're at their wits' end because of the phones. They can't stand it. And I heard horrific stories. I heard stories from teachers of students receiving phone calls from their, you know, a grandparent, and they answer the call. You know, they take the call, or while the teacher is talking, you know, a kid putting their earbuds in and playing music, or a common one is watching videos, Netflix and YouTube, or doing things like snapping a photo of the teacher and posting it to social media during class. So we asked about that, and we asked, how often do you witness this? Because we thought the kids wouldn't be honest in saying that they do it, right? So we asked, how often do you witness this at school? And 72% said that they witness it. You know, people watching videos, playing games, and using social media every single day. So obviously that's going to be a distraction in the classroom and is going to erode focus, concentration, absorption, and learning in the classroom. And then we thought this through and thought, well, what's allowing this to happen? You know, imagine 20 or 30 years ago when we didn't have these devices, no one would have thought of breaking out a board game, right, in the middle of class, or bringing a micro television in and plugging it in and watching a video, right, or a movie. So we thought, you know, obviously one component to this that's facilitating this is the fact that they can get all of these things on this little device that's with them all the time. But we thought something else must be happening. There must be a certain percentage of kids that don't even realize that it's rude. And I actually validated this in one of the groups I did. This was actually with college students. But a number of the kids in this group said, I don't think it's rude. So we asked this on the survey, and we found that 35% do not consider watching videos, playing games, or using social media during class to be rude, which obviously raises the question of, you know, what's going to happen when they go to college and then get a job, right? Somehow a third of these kids are getting the signal that this is acceptable behavior and that it's not rude or disrespectful to the teacher or to the other students. We also asked what % of your schools ban the use of phones during class, and 67% said that their school bans the use of phones during class. So obviously, if 72% are seeing, the phones being used for video in class, that the rules aren't being enforced everywhere, right? But these two bullet points were very interesting. If you look at the schools that don't have a ban, we asked the kids, would you like a ban? Would that be a good thing? And only 15% said yes, right? So basically, most of the kids at a school that don't have a ban on phones don't want one. But look at the reversal. If you look at the second bullet point, those kids who attend schools that do have a ban, over half of them are glad that they have a ban. So that suggests that once a school implements a policy, that the kids see that it's a good thing and they actually appreciate it, which I thought was a very significant finding. This was interesting to see when we asked, does your school ban the use of phones during class? You can see here there are far more middle schools than high schools that have bans. So middle schools it's far more common to have a ban at a middle school. Okay, so high schools don't have as much of a ban as the middle schools do. But if you look down here, do you feel your phone is an obstacle to getting grades, the best grade you can in school? Look at the breakdown between middle school and high school. So the high school kids are less likely to have a ban, but they're more likely to feel that the phone is an obstacle to getting the best grades they can. So to me, that may suggest that, the high school kids feel that way because they don't have the ban, and maybe it's the classroom experience that is eroding their confidence and their ability to do the best they can in school. Sleep is another big one that we had heard about in our exploratory research. So we asked, do you take your phone to bed? Because we had heard that kids are spending a lot of time on their phone after they go to bed. It's keeping them up for hours is what we heard. And 80% said they typically spend time on their phone after they go to bed, but before falling asleep. So we asked the question in a way that it's clear it's not like 6 p.m. and you're on your phone, right? It's after you go to bed, but before you fall asleep. So 20%, that's a good thing. I guess 20% are not taking their phone to bed. But look at the breakdown. So we broke down, we asked them how much time they're spending on their phones after they go to bed. And you can see here it's, it's 11%. I'm sorry, it's hard for me to see this. Less than 15 minutes, 24%, 15 to 30 minutes, 22%, 30 to 60 minutes. But what I wanted to see here was beyond 1 hour. So how many kids are spending more than an hour on their phone after they go to bed? And if you combine these three, that's 40%. So 40% are spending more than an hour on their phone after they go to bed. And this seems sort of outrageous. You can see here, 11% are spending 2 to 3 hours, and then another 11% are spending more than 3 hours. So clearly, if for 40% of the kids spending more than an hour on their phone after they go to bed, and 22% spending 2 or more hours, that's going to erode their cognitive ability at school the next day. And if it's happening repeatedly throughout the week, it's got to be having an impact on these kids and their ability to learn and function. We're almost through here. Attention span. We wanted to, people talk about, and there's been research that shows that the phones and the technology is shortening people's attention span. And what we were really interested in is learning if the kids felt that they were aware of this, right? So a lot of times we act like the kids don't really know how this stuff is impacting them. So that's a lot of what's behind the survey. It's seeing if the kids are conscious of the problem, and sure enough. And this is also related to this whole notion that a lot of people push that, well, we've entered a new era. The digital natives are different. So the things that might bother us because we have to adapt to them don't bother the young people. Well, that's not the case with a lot of kids. 49% said that they feel that their smartphone shortens their attention span. So that's half, basically, think that their phone shortens their attention span. And this is another, I thought, measure of attention span. We asked, how often do you get online with the intention of doing one thing, but then end up getting sidetracked and do something else for a long time? And 56% said that happens every single day to them. And you know, and then we've got, of course, you know, there are others that said once a week or several times a week, but every day there were 56% having that experience. So now I'm closing things out here. I've got a series of questions we asked that to try to get at. We're trying to get at with this series of questions whether kids want help, right? So a lot of the attitude in the media and with people who are experts on this is there's sort of a top-down approach. It's like, well, we see that there's a problem. You know, we look at objective behavioral measures. We see there's a problem, and we need to impose limits to correct it. And what I'm trying to explore is the complement to that. And do the kids also see that it's a problem? And do they wish they could cut down on their phone time? Or do they want to be rescued? Do they want someone to come and impose limits on them? Do they actually want that? So we asked, do you wish you had a greater ability to self-limit the time you spend on your phone? And more than half, 65%, almost two-thirds said yes. So they're clearly, there's a frustration there. They want to curb their phone use, and they're unable to. They wish they were better at it. These are some quotes. We followed that question up with an open-ended saying, well, can you tell us why? And it's, you know, it's a little sad to read some of these things, you know. Once I'm on my phone, there's no leaving the phone until it eventually dies, and that takes a good 10 hours. I'd like to look outside and see what's around, not what's on my tiny screen. You know, if I could curb my screen time, I could do more things with my time instead of being on my phone for hours on end. So I can experience fun activities in life. So they're saying the activities I'm experiencing are not fun, right? So I can have better social interactions and relationships and get more focused on my schoolwork. So again, the 65% wish they were better able to curb their phone use for these reasons, so they could do more and be more pleasurable things than just stare at a screen. We also asked whether they've attempted to reduce their screen time, and 68%, so an even higher percent, said yes, I've tried to reduce them. So they're actually, you know, more than two-thirds of the kids have tried to give it a shot to cut down on their screen time. Now, we follow that up with, have you ever succeeded in reducing your screen time? And 69% said yes. But I want to be clear that a lot of these examples, they're not, when you look at them, the majority are not habitual, right? You know, a lot of it is, you know, one-time examples, or sometimes they do this, right? It's clear that they haven't created long-term solutions, right? But it's a very positive thing, obviously. My point is not to disparage what they're saying. It's just to make it clear that it doesn't mean they've solved the problem, right? They've succeeded in, you know, at times and in different ways, yet the 65% still want to be better at it. We asked those kids, you know, can you give us an example of what you did? So I deleted my social media for a month. I turned my phone off and told my friends I was taking a break from social media. I would shut my phone off from when I woke up to when I got home from school. I made plans so I didn't have to spend much time on my phone. I looked at everything I needed to check or did what I had to do, and then I limited how much time I spent on social media. I learned not to spend so much time looking at other people's posts and looked only at the important ones. So that sounds like more of a long-term solution. I set a timer. So those are some examples of how they succeeded in cutting down on their screen time. So this is where I get into asking, do you want to be rescued, right? So I say, do you wish that someone would help you reduce the time you spend on your phone by imposing some reasonable time limits? And a quarter of them, 26%, said yes. I wish someone would come and impose limits on me, which I think is substantial. And then another way to look at this is, have you ever tried, you know, so what this question here, have you ever tried to persuade a friend to spend less time on their phone? What this is trying to get at is what I mentioned earlier, which is, are they aware that there's a problem, right? That there are a lot of people in this area who act like the kids don't understand there's a problem and we just have to impose limits on them. And I'm trying to illustrate here that they really are aware there's a problem. If they weren't, they wouldn't try to persuade a friend to spend less time on their phone, right? So 37% said I've actually tried to help a friend out and get them to spend less time. So that's the presentation, and now if anyone has any questions.
Mike, we did have a few come in as you were talking, so I have a couple here. The first one is a two-parter. So part one is there a definition of smartphone addiction, that is the amount of time spent on a phone, number of apps used, or something similar? And if so, was that definition given to the respondents?
I did not know of any objective definition of it, and I haven't heard anything that's universal. And there's even a year ago, people were trying to avoid using the word addiction, right? So they're actually, and I was doing this too. We're using the term smartphone overuse. So this field, from what I can see, it's just wide open. So there's no governing authority. Like I mentioned, the World Health Organization just created a code, a diagnostic code for video game addiction. There's nothing, so that's an objective third body, like a sort of a governing body in a way, right? There's nothing that I know of that did that. And again, my point is, I mentioned earlier that because there's no objective measure, what we're doing is we're asking kids to self-report. So they are projecting their own definition of addiction. That's true. But it's not perfect, but it's a way to get at, again, what I'm trying to do is get at this idea of how many kids and how widespread is this whole idea that I can't stop using my phone when I want to, right? So whether we call that addiction or not, that's the objective. So what was the second part, Brian?
The second part was if there was a definition, was it given to the respondents?
Yeah, so I had no definition. It was just what percent of your friends do you consider to be addicted to their phones? Let me say one thing that I mentioned earlier that I noticed a change, right? 2 years ago, kids were openly self-reporting and labeling themselves as addicted to their phone. And I felt that changed last summer, and I'm seeing it this summer too, that they're underreporting themselves. What I heard in one of the focus groups I did last week was, in one of the groups, a few of the kids said, well, we consider ourselves to be dependent, not addicted. But they consider their friends to be addicted, right? So there's a big issue here with, this hasn't been standardized yet. It's such a new thing, I think, but I think eventually it will, so.
Okay, we have one other question here. Are there any benchmarks for such findings as bullying? Examples, how many kids in general have been bullied, etc.?
Any benchmarks? That I do not know. I do not know. And we did not do extensive research on, we didn't do any kind of extensive research on bullying. To prepare for this survey. You can see this was a 46-question survey, and it's a big survey, covered a lot of topics, and there are a lot of people who are experts on bullying, right? And I feel that people generally have a sense for what bullying is, but I did not do any extra research on it. I based everything on what I had heard over the last 2.5 years of my own research, really. So.
Okay, and I have another question here. Mike, will we be sending out copies of the slides from today's presentation?
I don't know if we're able to send them en masse, but we're happy to share them. We have a report available on my website, screeneducation.org. But if people want to, I'll see if we can. But feel free to email me and I can send you the slides. I'm happy to do that. Or you can go to my website and on the homepage, there's a banner that says, check out the report on the survey, and you can download it there.
Michael, yeah, we have no problem sending. We have the email addresses for everybody that attended the call, so we have absolutely no issue sending those if you're comfortable with that.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Anything else, Brian?
One more just came in. Bullying is an example of benchmarks. What do you use to judge if a smartphone behavior is high or not compared to similar non-smartphone behavior?
what do you, could you repeat the first part of that?
Yeah, bullying is an example of benchmarks. What do you use to judge if a smartphone behavior is high or not compared to similar non-smartphone behavior?
What do you use to judge whether a smartphone behavior is high or not compared to, I'm sorry, compared to what? I'm just having a little trouble following it. Compared to
similar non-smartphone behavior.
Oh, I see. Okay, so I think they're asking is online, is there a way to measure whether online bullying is more prevalent or common than face-to-face bullying? I think that's what they're getting at. And is there a benchmark we can use? I don't know. I don't know. Again, I just want to be clear that I'm not I'm not claiming to be an expert on bullying or online bullying, right? So what I'm trying to illustrate here, I ask the questions in a certain way on purpose. I'm trying to elicit the kids' viewpoint and their experience. So I wasn't relying on, I don't know if there are any benchmarks. I didn't do a lot of research on that. There might be, there might not be, but I wanted to paint a picture here of the emotional burden the kids have using their phones so often, right? Being compulsively using their phones. And, you know, the bottom line is that 36% say that they witness bullying at least once a week, which I think is high. And you combine that with gossip and drama and notifications, it's a big burden, I think, on them. Anything else? Brian?
Oh, sorry, Mike. Don't have any other questions yet, but just as a reminder for everyone, if you do have a question, please put it into the chat box here. We'll give you one more minute if you have any other questions.
Hey guys, it looks like one just came in. So assuming a mob mentality within children and trends, what does it say being self-reported as addicted is no longer cool, but reporting a friend as addicted is almost standard? Does it mean that there is a dichotomy around addiction awareness, but a lack of awareness around oneself?
It's a good question, and I don't know. The way I was thinking about this, and this is something that I can explore actually this summer in the other focus groups I'm doing. It's something I'm planning on talking about. But I was wondering if it could be because, you know, think about it, 2 summers ago, 2016, this was not a widespread issue. It really exploded in 2017. So it was 2017, starting in like March or so, when we started seeing all this media coverage, and now it's like a daily thing. There were all these articles being written. There was barely anything back then being written about this. So, and all the media coverage of the fact that, you know, it's damaging kids and that Silicon Valley is doing this intentionally. I'm just guessing that this did filter down to the kids, and they became aware of this problem of smartphone addiction, and it's pejorative in their minds. So I'm just thinking that it's more that they don't want to label themselves this way, so they're not necessarily being honest. I think it's significant that, you know, I think there's an element of denial. If only 10 to 15, 20% of kids are saying that they themselves are addicted, but 70% of their friends are, I do think that there's an element of denial there, you know. And it's to protect themselves, I think. I don't think it's a major problem, you know. And here's the point: even if they're not labeling themselves addicted, the survey is showing they have all the behaviors that mean they can't stop using their phone, right? We're illustrating with this survey that they can't stop using the phone. They want to stop and they can't, and it's hurting them. It's eroding dimensions of their lives. So. Is there anything else?
One more came in. Have you explored the impact of social media on dating and relationships in teens? My students tell me they track their significant other's locations, get angry if they don't respond, etc. I wondered, what about long-term impacts on relationships?
Could you just read that again? It was sort of long, and
Sure. Have you explored the impact of social media on dating and relationships in teens? My students tell me they track their significant other's locations, get angry if they don't respond, etc. I wonder about the long-term impact on relationships.
No, actually, I have not explored that. Yeah, and it's an interesting subject, but no, I have not looked at that. So I would guess that other people have. You know, that there's probably, I would guess like academic researchers probably have looked at that. I know there are a lot of them doing research on social media. So, anything else?
I don't have any other questions in. So, Samantha, are there any more that came in?
I don't see anything else.
Okay. Well, I put our contact information up there, so you can feel free to contact us if you have any questions or comments or even suggestions for further research. And if you want to copy the report, I guess we're gonna send it out, but feel free to contact me directly if you want to do that too, to get a copy. So thank you very much. And we recorded this, so we will eventually be posting this to YouTube, and it'll be accessible through our website. So thanks very much.